Why humans needed stories to survive. A child sits close to the fire, not because it is warm, because beyond the circle of light, the forest has become a different animal. The adults are quiet now. The tools have been placed within reach. Sparks lift into the dark like tiny disappearing stars, and somewhere past the trees, something moves without showing itself. The child cannot see it, but the child can see the faces of the adults watching the darkness. Then one of them begins to speak. Not loudly, not like entertainment, like a warning disguised as memory. Most people think stories began when humans had extra time, when the hunt was over, when the stomach was full, when language became beautiful enough to decorate the silence. That is not what happened. Stories did not begin as decoration. They began as survival technology. Long before writing, long before cities, long before schools, books, religions, theaters, libraries, or screens, human beings were carrying invisible maps inside their voices. They were describing animals that were not present, rivers that were miles away, plants that looked harmless but could stop a heart, people who betrayed trust, ancestors who made one mistake and never returned. A story was not just a story. It was a memory with teeth. For most of human history, a human being alone was not impressive. We were not the strongest animal. We were not the fastest. We had no claws worth fearing, no armored skin, no night vision, no venom, no natural weapon that made the wilderness step aside. What we had was a nervous system that could listen, and eventually, a mind that could make danger travel through time. That was the strange power of story. A leopard could only attack the body in front of it. A storm could only strike the people beneath it. A poisonous plant could only kill the person who swallowed it. But a story could let one death protect 100 lives. If one hunter crossed the ridge and vanished, his body might never come back. But someone could remember the direction he walked. Someone could remember the weather that morning. Someone could remember the silence before the birds scattered. And around the fire, that absence could be turned into instruction. Do not go there when the mist is low. Do not follow tracks into stone country. Do not drink from the pool where the insects float dead. The dead could not speak, so the living spoke for them. This may be one of the oldest functions of storytelling, to make experience portable. One body suffers. Many bodies learn. The cost of survival is paid once, then carried forward in words. Most animals learn from danger directly. They touch the fire. They flee the predator. They taste the bitter leaf and remember. Humans discovered something stranger. We could learn from things that never happened to us. A child could fear the river before falling into it. A young hunter could avoid the cave before seeing the bones inside. A tribe could remember a famine that ended before any living member was born. That ability changed everything. Because in nature, direct experience is expensive. Sometimes the first lesson is also the last. Story gave humans a way to cheat that system. It allowed the brain to simulate danger without paying the full price of reality. It created a theater inside the mind where death could be rehearsed safely. And this is where storytelling becomes more than culture. It becomes evolution. Researchers still debate exactly how and why human language developed, but one thing is difficult to ignore. Once humans could transmit complex information through speech, survival was no longer limited to what one individual had personally seen. Knowledge became communal. Fear became inherited. A child could be born into a landscape already filled with meaning. This tree gives fruit after the rains. That valley floods without warning. Those tracks belong to something that hunts at night. That stranger smiles too quickly. The world was no longer just a place of objects. It became a place of remembered consequences. And consequences are what stories carry best. A list can tell you what exists. A story tells you what happens next. That difference matters. If an elder simply says, "Do not enter the marsh," the warning may fade. But if the elder describes a man stepping into green ground that looked solid, sinking slowly while his brother held a branch that snapped in his hands, the warning becomes physical. The child can feel the mud, hear the panic, see the hand disappear. The brain remembers scenes more deeply than rules. It remembers faces, movement, fear, loss. Story turns information into emotion, and emotion tells the nervous system, keep this. This is why ancient stories often sound extreme to modern ears. They are filled with monsters, curses, punishments, transformations, forbidden places, dangerous animals, jealous spirits, broken promises, floods, fires, and people who ignore warnings. We sometimes treat these as primitive explanations. But that may be too simple. A monster at the edge of the forest may have been more than imagination. It may have been a way to compress many dangers into one unforgettable shape: predator, darkness, distance, disobedience, isolation, and death. A spirit in the river may have been a hydraulic fact wearing a face. A forbidden mountain may have been unstable weather, thin air, falling stone, and generations of missing bodies transformed into sacred fear. The human mind is very good at remembering agents. A rock slide is abstract. An angry mountain is memorable. This does not mean ancient people were foolish. It means they understood something modern education often forgets. The mind does not preserve truth only because it is accurate. It preserves truth because it is vivid. And sometimes vividness keeps people alive. Imagine a child being told not to wander after sunset. That instruction is weak. Now imagine the same child hearing that beyond the firelight, an old thing walks on silent feet and takes children who do not answer when their mothers call. One version is advice. The other enters the blood. Modern people may call it superstition, but in a world without fences, streetlights, hospitals, police, maps, antibiotics, or emergency rooms, fear was not always irrational. Fear was infrastructure. Stories built invisible walls where physical walls did not exist. They marked boundaries. They told children where not to go, whom not to trust, when not to speak, what not to eat, and why the world outside the group could not be treated casually. Before law, story punished. Before science, story preserved observations. Before history, story kept the dead socially alive. Before architecture, story made shelter inside the mind. But stories did something even deeper. They taught humans how to cooperate with people who were not present. An animal can respond to the group it sees. Humans learn to respond to ancestors, future children, invisible agreements, remembered debts, sacred places, group identities, and shared myths. A tribe is not held together only by blood. It is held together by the stories everyone agrees to live inside. We are the people who came from the river. We are the people who do not break the winter promise. We are the people who bury our dead facing the sunrise. These statements are not just poetic. They organize behavior. They make strangers into kin. They turn scattered bodies into a we. And we may be the most powerful survival story humans ever invented. Because the wilderness did not only threaten individuals, it threatened groups from within. Hunger creates conflict. Fear creates suspicion. Desire creates betrayal. Grief creates instability. Without shared meaning, a human group can break apart long before the predators arrive. Stories gave suffering a shape. They explained why sacrifice mattered, why courage was admired, why greed was dangerous, why the young should listen to the old, why the dead should be remembered, why one person's action could endanger everyone. In this sense, storytelling was not escapism. It was social engineering by firelight. The earliest storytellers may have been doing something extraordinarily complex. They were regulating emotion, preserving knowledge, enforcing norms, strengthening identity, entertaining children, honoring the dead, and preparing the group for danger, all at once. And they were doing it without writing anything down. Only breath, only memory, only rhythm. This is why repetition mattered, why certain phrases returned, why stories had patterns, warnings, reversals, and endings that felt inevitable. A story had to survive the weakness of human memory. It had to be shaped so it could pass from mouth to mouth without falling apart. The most memorable stories lived. The forgettable ones died. And over generations, culture itself became a kind of selection process. The stories that helped groups coordinate, remember, endure, and survive were more likely to be repeated. The stories that failed to matter vanished into silence. This is a disturbing thought. Some stories may have survived not because they were beautiful, but because they were useful. Beauty came later. Or perhaps beauty was part of the usefulness. A beautiful story is easier to remember. A frightening story is harder to ignore. A sacred story is harder to disobey. A tragic story is harder to repeat in real life. The mind keeps what moves it, and ancient storytellers learned how to move the mind before they ever understood the brain. Today, we often imagine ourselves as different from those people around the fire. We have data now. We have records. We have satellites, medical imaging, search engines, digital archives, and machines that can store more information than any human lineage ever could. But the old machinery is still running. We still understand the world through stories. A person does not simply lose a job. They tell themselves a story about failure, injustice, reinvention, or fate. A nation does not simply remember a war. It builds monuments, anniversaries, heroes, villains, wounds, and myths. A child does not simply learn what danger is. They absorb the stories their family tells in lowered voices. Even science, the most disciplined method humans have invented for resisting false stories, still enters public imagination through narrative. A discovery has a beginning, a mystery, a struggle, a revelation, and a consequence. Without story, even truth can feel inert. This is not a flaw in human intelligence. It is the shape of human intelligence. We are not minds that occasionally enjoy stories. We are story-shaped animals. Our brains constantly arrange fragments into cause and meaning. A sound in the hallway, a look on someone's face, a pain in the chest, a message left unanswered. We do not merely perceive these things. We place them inside possible plots. Something is wrong. Someone is angry. I am in danger. This can mislead us. It often does. The same imagination that helped our ancestors avoid predators can make modern people suffer from imagined futures, invented judgments, and invisible threats that never arrive. The story engine does not shut down just because the cave became an apartment and the forest became a city. It keeps working. It keeps searching for patterns. It keeps asking what happens next. And perhaps that is why stories still have such power over us. They reach beneath argument. They touch the older system, the one that learned by watching faces in firelight, listening for danger, and remembering who did not come home. A good story does not feel like information. It feels like experience. For a few minutes, your body treats imagined events as if they matter. Your attention narrows. Your pulse changes. Your emotions rehearse possibilities. You become someone else, somewhere else, facing a world that is not physically present. That is an ancient miracle. A controlled hallucination shared between minds. One person speaks and another person sees. No claws, no map, no blood, no storm, only language moving through air. And yet the nervous system responds. Long ago, that response may have meant the difference between living and dying. The child who remembered the warning survived the river. The hunter who remembered the old tale avoided the valley. The group that remembered betrayal guarded its food. The people who remembered famine stored enough to see spring. A story could not kill a predator, but it could make sure you were not standing in the wrong place when the predator arrived. That was enough. Maybe this is why humanity never stopped telling stories, even after we became powerful. Even after we built walls, farms, armies, ships, temples, laboratories, and cities bright enough to erase the stars. The dangers changed. The need did not. We still gather around artificial fires, watching shadows move across screens, asking to be frightened, comforted, instructed, or transformed. We still pass warnings through narrative. We still teach children with characters. We still explain death with myth, identity with history, morality with parable, and the future with prophecy. The fire is different now. The circle is larger. But the old exchange remains. Someone has seen something. Someone has suffered something. Someone has returned from the edge of experience carrying a shape made of words. And the rest of us lean closer. Because somewhere inside the human animal, there is still a child at the edge of the fire, listening to the dark, trying to survive what it has not yet seen.